All right, book 5 questions. Any that anyone wants to review? Any answers you either weren't able to find or were not sure about?
Number 8.
Number 8.
And 6.
Okay, so 6 and 8. Yeah, 6 and 8 are connected to each other. So let's start with 6. Who intervenes to prevent Odysseus from drowning, and how?
I got Cadmus' daughter, but I don't think.
Yes, Cadmus' daughter. You catch her name anywhere? There's actually 2 names given for her. Can we get her name? So her name, she's first introduced on, let's see, page 162. She's got 2. This is Cadmus's.
What's her main name?
Daughter. So Leucothea. And Homer tells us she used to be a mortal woman named Ino. Now she's a goddess named Leucothea, which just means white goddess. What does Leucothea do for Odysseus here while he's caught in this storm?
I guess she saves him.
She does save him. How?
Yeah.
This is on page 163.
Weird.
She tells him to wear it and do what with his other clothes?
Take it off.
Take him off. She says, strip off those clothes and leave your craft. Abandon ship, take his clothes off, and only have this scarf around his waist. And there's one last thing she tells him. There in line about 385 or so. What else is he supposed to do with this scarf? So he's supposed to tie it around his waist and then swim for shore, wearing only that.
Throw that back to sea.
Right. She says, but once you grasp the mainland with your hands, untie it quickly. Throw it into the wine-dark sea far from the shore. But you turn your head away. So throw it back into the sea without looking. And he does do that on page... throwing it help him. The throwing it doesn't help him. Homer doesn't really explain what the deal is with throwing it back. But this is a sort of theme in Greek myth that these gifts from the gods are not really the sort of things that men get to hold on to. So, this is her scarf. She's going to lend it to him for some time. And then there's this other component of not looking back, of not looking to preserve the sort of sacred nature of this. Being careful about what you look at is a theme that appears sometimes in Greek myth. Most famously in what myth? Does anyone know what Greek myth is looking backwards, common theme in? Orpheus, the myth of Orpheus, who's this musician, and his wife Eurydice dies very tragically. And so he goes down into the, with the help of the gods, he goes down into the underworld to retrieve her from the dead. But there's a condition to it. She can only return to the living if she makes it all the way out of the underworld without looking back once. And just as they're about to leave the underworld and enter into the... so here also there's this sort of religious component to it. Here with this sort of respect for the gods. Here he has this holy gift from her, this immortal scarf, but he has to return it, and he's not supposed to look when he returns it. Especially here, given that she's a female goddess, this is probably connected with sort of her modesty. It's not a good thing to do something against the modesty of a goddess. All right. Yes, so that's what happens with Leucothea. Any others from book 5 that you want to ask about? Anybody at home want to ask about any of them?
Question 1.
Number 1. Why does Zeus get annoyed with Athena when she complains of the danger that Telemachus faces on his journey back from Pylos and Sparta? Anyone find this? So this is on the very beginning of book 5. is the middle of page 153. So book 5 opens with the gods on Olympus talking, and Athena is speaking to her father Zeus about how unfair it is that Odysseus is stuck with Calypso still. And on 153, she says, and now his dear son, they plot to kill the boy on his way back home. Yes, he sailed off for news of his father, to holy Pylos first, then out to the sunny hills of Lacedaemon. What does Zeus say in response here? Mine's 24 to 31. What does he say to her? She says, it's not really fair that this is happening to Telemachus. And Zeus says what? It's her job. He says, come now, wasn't the plan your own? You conceived it yourself. Sail him home with all your skill. The power is yours, no doubt. You deal with it. I said you could do that. Now go do it. Sort of weird exchange there between these two gods. And the others, last call. All right, moving on. Now, we're going to skip the next 3 books, books 6, 7, and 8. I'll give a brief overview of what happens in these. So where we left Odysseus at the end of book 5, where is he at the end of book 5?
Matt. Oh no, he just got to the island.
Right, he arrived at the island of Phaeacia. Is the name of the island. This is the island Odysseus swims to. Okay, Phaeacia. So he arrives on the island, and what does he do when he gets ashore? What does he do? He's just made this journey for about 3 weeks at sea. To swim the last portion through a storm. Anybody catch that? At the end of book 5. We're on page 166, 167. Really 167. Where is Odysseus at the end of book 5? What does he do once he gets to this island? He makes it ashore, and then what does he do? He goes to sleep. He's exhausted. And where does he go to sleep? In the woods, right? He has a couple of options. He first considers, maybe I should just pass out right here on the beach. I'm so tired. Then he thinks, well, it might get cold. And the other thought is, well, I could go in the woods, but maybe there are wild animals there. He ends up going to the woods. Covers himself with leaves to keep himself warm. And there are these 2 trees that are very tightly grown together that he sleeps under. So he's not going to get rained on. The leaves will keep him warm. When book 6 opens, so just to give you a brief overview here. Book 6, Odysseus wakes up and he hears voices. There are people nearby. It turns out that the princess of the island, whose name is Nausicaa, has come with her maids to bathe in the river that Odysseus swam into to get onto the island. And they're playing around. The maids are washing her clothes. They're playing catch. And Odysseus thinks, well, okay, here are people. They seem pretty civilized. I guess I should show myself. What makes this an awkward situation, besides the fact that Nausicaa is a young, unmarried woman? What's awkward about this? Think of Odysseus. He arrives at this island. What do we see him do before he left his ship? Or when he left his ship?
Oh, yeah, nice, man.
He's naked, yeah. He's got no clothes at all. He had the scarf when he was swimming. And now he's got no clothes at all. He's this big, burly probably hairy man, suddenly coming out of the woods, all these young women, they're a little frightened at first. But they recognize his nobility, and so they take him back to the palace. So in book 7, then, and there's a little bit of tension also because when she brings him back to the palace, there's some question, maybe her parents want to convince Odysseus to take her as his wife, which doesn't end up happening because we know Odysseus wouldn't even stay with Calypso, who is immortal. Book 7, Odysseus gets a tour of Phaeacia. Phaeacia. He tours the island. And then in book 8, there's a feast in Odysseus' honor, held by the Phaeacians. There are dancers, there are acrobats, there's music, there's food,
They find out who he is.
and wine. Yes, they know who he is, he tells them. And there's a bard telling stories about the Trojan War. And they ask Odysseus, surely you must know about the war, you were there. You've been wondering. Tell us what has been your journey. And so in book 9, books 9, 10, 11, and 12 actually, we're going to read all 4 of those books. Odysseus is going to tell the Phaeacians about his adventures up to this point. So that's what we're going to get here. A big flashback in the middle of this book, filling us in on Odysseus' journey. Remember, when we first meet him at Calypso's island, that's one of his last stops before he goes home. The Phaeacians, this island Phaeacia, is actually going to be his last stop before he makes it home. But what's he been doing for the last 9 years or so? That's what we're going to find out in these 4 of those questions for you guys. So I'll get started on that. We'll have a test next week, probably Thursday, not Monday or Tuesday, either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, on books 1 through 5. So make sure you have those questions answered. Make sure they're correct. We can do some review next week also. The test will just be some of the questions drawn from those review questions. So make sure that you know who the characters are. You know what the various events are of the book. Yes. Probably it'll be about 15. Yeah, 15. So it's going to be a small subset. So there's 5 books. You've got 8 to 10 questions, or maybe like 8 to 12 questions on each. So let's say 10. So there's about 50 questions. I'm only going to pick about 15 of them. So focus on the most important ones first. The things that have to do with characters who come up frequently, important events, the little nitpicky details. Study those if you have time to, but not. So most days I'm available after school. My office hours, where I'm always available, are Tuesday afternoons, 2:45 to 3:45, and I'll be in room 5. If I'm not there, you can look in the room at the end of the hall where the teachers hang out. Otherwise, I also have virtual hours on Wednesdays, 2:45 to 3:45 on Google Hangouts. But if you want to find another time, let me know and we can find some other time. And yeah, I'd be glad to go over any of that stuff also. All right, so that's coming up. Book 9 here. Books 9 through 12, this is the most famous part of the Odyssey, Odysseus' adventures. We're going to see a lot of different events here. All right, well, let's just start reading. So page 211, book 9, the Odyssey, in the one-eyed giant's cave. Odysseus, the great teller of tales, launched out on his story. Alcinous, Majesty, shining among your island people. What a fine thing it is to listen to such a bard as we have here. The man sings like a god. The crown of life, I'd say. There's nothing better than when deep joy holds sway throughout the realm, and banqueters up and down the palace sit in ranks, enthralled to hear the bard. And before them all, the tables heaped with bread and meats, and drawing wine from a mixing bowl, the steward makes his rounds and keeps the wine cups flowing. This, to my mind, is the best that life can offer. But now, you're set on probing the bitter pains I've borne, so I'm to weep and grieve, it seems, still more. Well then, what shall I go through first? What shall I save for last? 2:12. What pains? The gods have given me my share. Now, let me begin by telling you my name, so you may know it well, and I, in times to come, if I can escape the fatal day, will be your host, your sworn friend, though my home is far from here. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known to the world for every kind of craft. My fame has reached the skies. Sunny Ithaca is my home. Atop her stands our sea mark, Mount Neriton's leafy ridges shimmering in the wind. Around her, a ring of islands circle side by side, Dulichion, Sami, wooded Zacynthus too. But mine lies low and away, the farthest out to sea, rearing into the western dusk, while the others face the east and breaking day. Mine is a rugged land, but good for raising sons. And I myself, I know no sweeter sight on earth than a man's own native country. True enough, Calypso, the lustrous goddess, tried to hold me back, deep in her arching caverns, craving me for a husband. So did Circe, holding me just as warmly in her halls, the bewitching queen of Aea, keen to have me too. But they never won the heart inside me, never. So nothing is as sweet as a man's own country, his own parents, even though he's settled down in some luxurious house, often a foreign land, and far from those who bore him. No more. Come, let me tell you about the voyage fraught with hardship Zeus inflicted on me, homeward bound from Troy. The wind drove me out of Ilion onto Ismarus, the Cicone stronghold. There I sacked the city, killed the men. But as for the wives and plunder, that rich haul we dragged away from the place, we shared it round, so no one, not on my account, would go deprived of his fair share of spoils. Then I urged them to cut and run, set sail. But would they listen? Not those mutinous fools. There was too much wine to swill, too many sheep to slaughter down the beach, and shambling longhorn cattle. And all the while the Cicones sought out other Cicones, called for help from their neighbors living inland, a larger force, and stronger soldiers too, skilled hands at fighting men from chariots, skilled when a crisis broke to fight on foot. Out of the morning mist they came against us, packed as the leaves and spears that flower forth in spring. And Zeus presented us with disaster, me and my comrades, doomed to suffer blow on mortal blow. Lining up, both armies battled it out against our swift ships. Both raped each other with hurtling bronze lances. Long as morning rose and the blessed day grew stronger, we stood and fought them off, massed as they were. But then, when the sun wheeled past the hour for unyoking oxen, the Cicones broke our lines and beat us down at last. Out of each ship, 6 men-at-arms were killed. The rest of us rode away from certain doom. So where's this first stop that Odysseus makes after he leaves Troy? Ilium is another name for Troy. The Greek name for Troy. The Greeks usually refer to it as Ilium. Troy is what the Romans usually say. Ismarus is their first stop. And what happens there? What happens there? Yes, they attack this city. They capture, they sack it, they defeat it, and then what happens? At the very top of page 213.
Oh, it goes down to the ship, but they didn't.
Right. He tells his men, all right, let's get out of here. They sack the city, they get gold, they get women, They share equally, so there won't be any fighting over stuff. And he says, top 213, then I urged them to cut and run, set sail. But would they listen? Not those mutinous fools. There was too much wine to swill, too many sheep to slaughter down along the beach, and shambling longhorn cattle. Why do his men not listen to him when he tells them, let's go? What kind of stuff?
Good stuff.
Good stuff too. Well, they already took most of the, they've got gold, they got the women, but what do they stick around for? The food and wine. His men want to stick around and party. And because they stick around and party, what happens? Some of them die. What happens while they're partying? Well, Odysseus' men are partying there on the beach. Cicones. Yeah, so there's a battle where Odysseus' men lose, and so 6 men from each ship die. Why did that battle happen, though? I thought they defeated the city. They stayed there, and what happened while they stayed? Right. He says here, line, 54 or so, and all the while the Cicones sought out other Cicones, called for help from their neighbors living inland. His men stick around and don't leave. If they just left, they would have gotten a lot of stuff. Instead, they stay and party. This is Odysseus' first time that he mentions his crew, his men. These men that fought with him in Troy. And how does he refer to them? What does he call them? Fools. What kind of fools? Mutinous fools. What is mutiny? Mutinous means someone who commits mutiny. What is that? What is mutiny? Right. Specifically refers to, on a ship primarily, where the crew rises up against the captain. It's a rebellion on a boat, usually in some context. I'm getting your messages, thank you. The mutinous fools. We know these men all die. Odysseus is alone by the time he gets to Calypso's island. Apparently, Odysseus was not too pleased with their performance. All right, but here we see for the first time that his men don't listen to him. All right, next stop, line 71. From there we sailed on, glad to escape our death, yet sick at heart for the dear companions we had lost. A volunteer, if you would go pick up the book 9 sheets from the printer. Those are on there. But I would not let our rolling ship set sail until the crews had raised the triple cry, saluting each poor comrade cut down by the fierce Cicones on that plain. Now, Zeus, who masses the storm clouds, hit the fleet with the north wind, a howling demonic gale, shrouding over in thunderheads the earth and sea at once. And night swept down from the sky, and the ships went plunging headlong on, our sails slashed to rags by the hurricane's blast. We struck them. Cringing at death, we rowed our ships to the nearest shoreline, pulled with all our power. There, for 2 nights, 2 days we lay by, no let-up, eating our hearts out, bent with pain and bone-tired. When dawn with her lovely locks brought on the 3rd day, then stepping the masts and hoisting white sails high, we lounged at the oarlocks, letting wind and helmsman keep us true on course. Thank you. Two 214. Yeah, very top 214. After we finish book 9. And now at long last, I might have reached my native land unscathed. But just as I doubled Malia's cape, a tide rip and the north wind drove me way off course, careering past Cythera. 9 whole days I was borne along by rough, deadly winds on the fish-infested sea. Then on the 10th, our squadron reached the land of the lotus eaters, people who eat the lotus, mellow fruit and flowers. We disembarked on the coast, drew water there, and crewmen snatched a meal by the swift ships. Once we'd had our fill of food and drink, I sent a detail ahead, 2 picked men and a third, a runner, to scout out who might live there, men like us perhaps, who live on bread. So off they went, and soon enough they mingled among the natives, lotus eaters. Lotus eaters who had no notion of killing my companions, not at all. They simply gave them the lotus to taste instead. Any crewman who ate the lotus, the honey-sweet fruit, lost all desire to send a message back, much less return. Their only wish to linger there with the lotus eaters, grazing on lotus, all memories of the journey home dissolved forever. But I brought them back to the hollow ships, and streaming tears I forced them, hauled them under the rowing benches, lashed them fast, and shouted out. They swung aboard at once. They sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm turned the water white with stroke on stroke. All right, so second stop here. We had the Cicones on Ismaris. Who are these next people that he encounters?
Some lotus lovers.
Yes, the lotus eaters. What is the deal with the lotus eaters?
The land of the lotus eaters. They
No thought, who had no notion of killing my companions, not at all.
like a drug.
It's like a drug. What happens when you eat the lotus?
You get lazy.
You get lazy. It's sweet. It's like honey. It's delicious. And he says, any crewman who ate the lotus, all memory of the journey home dissolved forever. So what does Odysseus do to avoid this?
Sounds like he spanked them.
He what, spanked them?
It sounds like that. He said like he all lashed them fast and tried to command them.
Yes, so he forces them back into the boat, hauled them under the rowing benches. So these are the benches that you sit on while you're rowing. Lashed them fast here means tied them. Lashing is tying something with rope to attach it to something else. He ties them to the benches, and they're crying the whole way. And then they all leave very quickly. He recognizes danger very quickly and forces his men into the ship. All right, there's stop number 2. Cyclops. Lawless brutes who trust so to the everlasting gods they never plant with their own hands or plow the soil. Unsown, unplowed, the earth teems with all they need. Wheat, barley, and vines swelled by the rains of Zeus to yield a big, full-bodied wine from clustered grapes. They have no meeting place for council, no laws either. No, up on the mountain peaks they live in arching caverns, each a law to himself, ruling his wives and children, not a care in the world for any neighbor. Now, a level island stretches flat across the harbor, not close inshore to the Cyclops coast, not too far out, thick with woods where the wild goats breed by hundreds. No trampling of men to start them from their lairs, no hunters roughing it out on the woody ridges, stalking quarry, ever raid their haven. No flocks browse, no plowlands roll with wheat, unplowed, unsown forever, empty of humankind. The island just feeds droves of bleating goats. For the Cyclops have no ships with crimson prows, no shipwrights there to build them good trim craft that could sail them out to foreign ports of call, as most men risk the seas to trade with other men. Such artisans would have made this island too a decent place to live in. No mean spot, it could bear you any crop you like in season. The water meadows along the low foaming shore run soft and moist, and your vines would never flag, the lands clear for plowing. Harvest on harvest, a man could reap a healthy stand of grain. The subsoil is dark and rich. There's a snug, deep-water harbor there, what's more. No need for mooring gear, no anchor stones to heave, no cables to make fast. Just beach your keels, ride out the days till your shipmate's spirit stirs for open sea and a fair wind blows. And last, at the harbor's head there's a spring that rushes fresh from beneath a cave, and black poplars flourish round its mouth. Well, here we landed, and surely a god steered us in through the pitch-black night. Not that he ever showed himself, with thick fog swirling around the ships, the moon wrapped in clouds, and not a glimmer stealing through that gloom. Not one of us glimpsed the island, scanning hard, or the long combers rolling us slowly toward the coast, not till our long ships had run their keels ashore. Beaching our vessels smoothly, striking sail, the crews swung out on the low shelving sand, and there we fell asleep, awaiting dawn's first light. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, we all turned out, intrigued to tour the island. The local nymphs, the daughters of Zeus himself, flushed mountain goats so the crews could make their meal. Quickly, we fetched our curved bows and hunting spears from the ships, and splitting up into 3 bands, we started shooting, and soon enough some god had sent us bags of game to warm our hearts. A dozen vessels sailed in my command, and to each crew 9 goats were shared out, and mine alone took 10. Then all day long till the sun went down, we sat and feasted well on sides of meat and rounds of heady wine. The good red stock in our vessels' holds had not run out. There was still plenty left. The men had carried off a generous store in jars when we stormed and sacked the Ciconi's holy city. Now we stared across at the Cyclops shore. So near we could even see their smoke, hear their voices, their bleating sheep and goats. And when the sun had set and night came on, we lay down and slept at the water's shelving edge. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, I called a muster briskly, commanding all the hands. The rest of you stay here, my friends in arms. I'll go across with my own ship and crew and probe the natives living over there. What are they? Violent, savage, lawless, or friendly to strangers, God-fearing men? We know here Odysseus is going to encounter because he tells us at the beginning.
This is before he kills Poseidon's son?
Yes, so here he's going to have, he already told us, and Odysseus has already told us that the Cyclops are here. Now he, in terms of his storytelling, he hasn't yet gotten to the point where they see the Cyclops. Why? Where do they land? What's this island that they land on?
He just said it's not far from the
Right, so it's an island very close. Nobody lives on this island. There are lots of goats there. His men have this giant feast with dozens and dozens of goats that they kill and eat. But notice Odysseus says, well, I'm going to go check out that island over there. They can tell that there are people there. They can hear their voices. We're going to see the Cyclops in just a moment, but Odysseus has already told us a little bit about them. What does he tell us about the Cyclops? At the top of page 215. What are some things that they do or that they don't do? They don't have what?
Laws.
They don't have laws? I'm sorry? Right, they don't have a council. They don't have any kind of government. What else? Order to things. Notice Odysseus, he lands on this island where there's just goats. And he says, you know, this would be a nice place, actually. You get some craftsmen here, some good hard workers. You could. They don't practice agriculture. They never plant with their own hands or plow the soil. Unsown, unplowed, the earth teems with all they need: wheat, barley, and vines swelled by the rains of Zeus. They just live off of, they've got sheep and goats. Everything else just kind of grows there. They don't have any need for agriculture. All of these things that are markers of civilization for the Greeks: agriculture, laws, government, common life. They don't have the Cyclops. That characterization is going to be important for Odysseus' encounter with them. Let's pause there. Have a good weekend, everybody. And